Hi everyone, welcome to this Keptn community and developer meeting. It will be actually the last meeting for 2020 since we are skipping the meeting on, is it Christmas Eve, I think we say, and also the meeting on December 31st, and we will meet all again on this January 7th, 2021. Yeah. So we already covered the first parts. As usual, we are skipping the diary part. You can just read through this by yourself. Just a quick update. On January 7th, we will start with a slightly new format. We try to make it a little bit more condensed, those meetings that we might only take maybe around 30 minutes for our meetings. So it will still be the same starting time and same meeting and same Zoom invite. So not a lot of changes, but we will come up with a slightly condensed version starting with next year. Yesterday we had a Keptn user group. This is one format that we want to start to allow Keptn users to present to other Keptn users and to share and to foster the exchange between different members of the Keptn community. And yesterday we had our first edition with Sumit from Intuit presenting their effort on integrating Jenkins with Argo, with Keptn, with load tests. And it was a great presentation. And for this, I just linked it here again. If you have not yet the chance to watch it or to join yesterday, you will find the link in here. And we also have a separate meeting document for this, where you can find all the details. It's the end of the quarter, and for this we also announced our Keptn community rockstars, and we also did this in yesterday's meeting of the Keptn user group. Again, I want to give a shout out to the team around Roman and Christian of the Triscon IT company. They have done a tremendous job on using Keptn, giving feedback to Keptn, presenting Keptn at various meetups, conferences, podcasts. So they are really, it's really well-deserved recognition for them. And as Andy said yesterday, maybe they're not the rock stars, but even a rock band, because it's a whole team that was announced as our community rock stars. And you will also find it on the GitHub repository on the Keptn community site. You will find now the entry for the Triscon IT team. So with this, I'm already handing over to Christian, and I think the first part is not even the code contribution, but a very a community contribution, so to say. So feel free to share, and I'm handing over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, it's not so much a contribution right now, but it is your place to contribute, actually. GitHub has made publicly available the GitHub discussions feature, which you can find via this link, or if you are on the repository itself, it's here under discussions. And the first item I want to present you is something that we just started to talk a little bit internally, and it's the Helm chart that we're currently using. There's a lot of manual work involved by setting the version, and I would like to automate this for obvious reasons. And I need some input, although from everyone in here, also for everyone that's watching that on YouTube. Please go to the discussion section. If you know some things about Helm charts, please provide some input. There are some questions in this discussion, and I think that's a way better format of having discussions, because they will stay there basically forever. It's not a GitHub issue that you will close, that you will lose focus on, or that means that you need to do anything. No, it's really just a discussion point, similar to Slack, but with a more asynchronous way of discussing, and obviously with a searchable way, because everything we read here is indexed by search engines. All right, any questions regarding the discussion feature?
Not a question, but I really like it. I think it's a great place for discussions. It looks a little bit more structured than Slack conversations. A Slack conversation can get, if they get long, you can easily lose focus. So let's really use this feature for discussions. Is it in any way also can we relate this to discussions on caps, or when should we move discussions on issues to discussions in the discussion board? Do we have
Yeah,
any
that's
guideline here, or we learn as we go?
we learn as we go, but GitHub offers categories that also can be edited. So, for instance, ideas or Q&A or show and tell. Basically, hey, I've made something great. I want to show it to the world. Then this would be the place. So I guess ideas and stuff can really be posted here. And maybe if we eventually say, hey, that's a great idea, let's make an issue or let's make a cap, then I guess we will need to learn when we do that and how often we do that. But yeah, that would be the place.
Okay, so let's use it
But
as a starting point.
yeah,
Cool.
but I think the discussion feature itself is also more centralized or more focused on the code itself, on a technical part, or at least in my opinion, this would be a good place to have the technical discussions. While hey, yeah, I want to do XYZ with Keptn, can somebody help me? Is probably better suited for Slack, because then you can get help immediately. While this is like, okay, I've posted something, let's see who replies.
Yeah, sure. Like if you need if you need to get some help, or if it's like an issue that might only relate to one single organization or person, then Slack is always a
Yeah.
good vehicle to use.
All right. My next part is some issues that I worked on, mainly focused on migrating from Travis CI to GitHub Actions. So basically, these two pull requests here, I'm not going to go into details, but they migrated Kubernetes utils and Go utils of our Keptn organization from Travis CI to GitHub Actions. And yeah, it's already been merged. It works great. We are getting pull requests automatically created. Unit tests are running. So these two repos are done. Similar thing here. I want to go into some details. I migrated the main Keptn repository from Travis CI to GitHub Actions, or at least almost everything was migrated except for integration tests. And I quickly want to show you what this means. So for instance, here we have our so-called CI pipeline, which consists of multiple steps that depend on each other. It's a nice feature on GitHub Actions, I really need to say, because you get a very nice representation of what's happening. And eventually down here, you get artifacts. So for instance, the Keptn CLI and Keptn installer is the Helm chart. We get these provided, in this case, for the master branch. So this is quite nice. Yeah, I really like it. If you're interested in the code, it's in the file ci.yaml in the GitHub. I think was it .github/workflows, I think. Yeah, it's in this file. It's a rather big and clumsy file, though. So a little bit of warning. There's 623 lines of YAML mixed with bash. Any questions regarding the pipeline?
Does it affect, if I'm a developer, does it affect me in any way? Or for me, I just push the code changes and everything else is automated, or do I have to do anything?
It should be automated. Not sure if we have an example. There's no recent pull request because this was merged in the last hour or so. But it should be everything automated. The only thing that it might affect you is if you have an old pull request, they might still try to run some things differently. So starting basically 1 hour ago, if you branch away from master, you should be fine. And if you have an older pull request, then it should still work, or you might need to rebase. We will add this in the discussion on the PR if we see it happening. Okay, and the last one, I actually have a question. I think the PR got approved already, but I'm wondering that the task was to define the memory and CPU resource request and limits for the distributors in the Helm chart. And they used to be like this. So basically written down in the manifest. And that was in the Helm chart like, I think 10 times, or however often we have distributors. And I've written a helper function for this. And I'm wondering if this is the correct way to go, if this is the correct place for the helper function even. Let me look for the file. That's the file. So the helper function is in installer manifests Keptn templates helpers template. It's in the same area as like Keptn service account or Keptn selector labels. Is there like, does anyone have a strong opinion on this, or is it fine?
So we discussed this, whether we should apply templating here. And so I really like it because now it's centralized and we can expect that every distributor will roughly have the same amount of resource requests. So cool solution. And sorry, I've overlooked your question on the PR.
That's okay. That's why we have the meeting. Okay. If that's okay, then I'll finish my part and I'll hand over to Florian, and thank you for the questions and the feedback.
All right, thank you, Christian. Really cool stuff you did here with all the GitHub actions. So that will make our lives a lot easier to have all this automation in place again. All right, let's start with my pull requests. So the first one was quite a interesting and fun one. So basically, let's have a look at the issues. So we identified that for some queries to our MongoDB data store, some queries were getting quite slow when there were many events for a certain project, because all events for a certain project are located within one MongoDB collection. And naturally, that means that at some point, if the collection grows up until a certain point, we will have a performance impact. And the scope of this issue here was to actually use Keptn to execute tests and evaluate the outcoming results for itself. So what I've done here is, in this linked pull request, I've created a project with the name Keptn Self-Monitoring that basically contained or all services within Keptn, or all Keptn core services. For example, like the MongoDB data store, the bridge, the configuration service, etc. I onboarded each of those services to the project, and then I made a task sequence for evaluating the performance, and using our new feature of being able to override certain task sequences, I added a task sequence to the evaluation task sequence, or I added another task, which is the test task. And this basically just performed a set of requests against the MongoDB data store, for example, like fetching all root events or fetching all evaluation finished events that have not been invalidated. And yeah, and after each run, I performed the execution of the evaluation. So I fetched the results using the Dynatrace SLI service, and then used the Lighthouse service to evaluate the SLOs. And the way this performance test was executed was the following. So first I created a new project, for example, with the name project 1. Then I created a service within that project. Then I triggered 100 evaluations for that service. Then I triggered the actual evaluation of the MongoDB data store to see how fast the queries are with those new events added to the collection. And after that, I invalidated 10 of the evaluations from the previously created service. This is because when evaluation finished events are fetched, or all evaluation finished events that are not invalidated are fetched, this involves a join mechanism in our MongoDB, and therefore it was important to also know the impact on the performance in case the number of invalidations grows. Then after adding those invalidations, I triggered another test, and basically I repeated those steps 2 until 6 until I had 13 services with 1,300 evaluations and 130 evaluation invalidations. And then I inspected the results. So this is a screenshot from my Dynatrace tenant where we have a time series for the response time. And here you can nicely see each of those test executions. And as you can also see, the response time grew with the number of events that are stored within the MongoDB. Here, this gap was my lunch break, where apparently my internet also kind of needed a break from all the testing. So that explains this gap here. And here, this area here was the execution of the last test run. What I also did after that, because we also need to see how the performance degradation actually impacts the user when he's, for example, using the bridge, so our UI. I also opened this project that I created during the test execution in the bridge. And this caused the bridge to fetch all the root events and all the event traces for all the services within the project. And then that led to an even higher response time, because eventually, due to this burst of requests, the MongoDB data store got overwhelmed by all the requests. So those are the test results. And out of that, I tried to identify possible improvements that we could make. So on the backend side, we could use indexes for certain collections. I've added my suggestions here. I also did some initial testing with those added indexes, and those measurements seem to be promising. So that might be something to follow up on. And also on the bridge side, we could, for example, try to reduce the number of requests that are sent at the same time, so the MongoDB data store will not get overwhelmed by a burst of requests. All right. Yeah, and I think that's a nice example of how we as the Keptn developers can use Keptn ourselves in order to investigate performance issues. Are there any questions about that?
Really cool.
Awesome work.
I like it. I like it too. And one of the follow-up tasks I also see here is that we add this into an automated test and then add an evaluation. And that would be basically a load testing scenario now for our own software.
Absolutely. So that would be really cool to have.
I also really like it, but I have one question regarding the setup. So you took the install helm chart and then extracted subcharts for all components, for all Keptn core components, right? So otherwise you could not onboard.
No, since I was only using the quality gates,
right.
I
Sorry.
just needed to create the service entities. So I didn't have to extract the Helm charts.
Right.
All right, if there are no further questions, let's continue with them.
Sorry, Florian, I would have one question. So it's the fix with the index that you put on some of the MongoDB properties, that's already merged. So this one will be part of Keptn 0.8?
No, the fix is not merged yet because I just added it manually with the MongoDB Compass UI. So yeah, so we still need to follow up on that, but the performance issue fixes were out of scope for that issue. So that was
okay. So it will be a follow-up
only
issue
about getting the status quo, and then we can derive follow-up issues on that.
Okay, got it. Is there any? I assume those follow-up issues are created and will be also tackled for the next release, or are they moved to later on?
No, they will be part of 0.8.
Yeah, perfect. Because we know that for some of the Keptn installations that have a lot of execution runs, that that they are having troubles with response times in the bridge. Thanks.
All right, let's continue. So the next pull request was for the docs. So this is not too spectacular. Here I just went through all the documentations and updated all the references to the cloud events and API calls we are using, and now that should be up to date for version 0.8. All right, let's continue with the next one. So this is about the examples repository. So since we have the new format for our shipyard file, we also, of course, needed to update the shipyard files that we use for our examples, which is the onboarding cards use case, and also the Unleash server. And that's what has been done here in this pull request. So now all the shipyard files and their task sequences are set up in a way that the tutorials will still function as they did in the previous versions. There are any questions about that? All right, if not, let's continue. So the next one is about our integration tests. Also, since we have the possibility of defining our own custom task sequences within our shipyard files, it was a lot easier now, or it is a lot easier now to test certain aspects and functionalities of Keptn in a more isolated way, which means that, for example, the test for the delivery assistant use case doesn't need to be executed in a way where a whole project and the whole service is onboarded and deployed, and then the complete artifact delivery sequence is executed, and then eventually we test the delivery assistant feature. But instead, now with the new shipyard, we are able to, for example, create a task sequence where only the delivery assistant step or the approval step is tested, and thus this also needs a lot less resources, and that's why I thought it might be a good idea to move that integration test to keys, because previously we only executed that integration test on the full test on GTE, which is kind of resource heavy, and now that one is executed in keys and can be performed much easier and a lot more often in our pipelines. And the same holds for the self-healing use case. So this also was a good candidate to be moved into the keys integration test, and can now also be executed here. Are there any questions about that? All right, if not, let's continue with the next one. So this one concerns the CLI. So if you recall, in the previous versions, We had a WebSocket communication mechanism in place to give immediate feedback to the CLI user. So for example, when the Keptn configure monitoring has been executed, or the create project or create service, we use that mechanism to print the logs from the executing services to our CLI. And from a technical point of view, it was pretty cool to have that working, but it turned out to be a little bit complicated, overly complicated and error prone. And that's why we abandoned this mechanism. And now we use the HTTP response from the services directly, for example, from the shipyard controller when a project or a service is created. So in that scenario, we can use that. Or the other case is the Keptn configure monitoring command. So here we still send a cloud event, and that is being executed, or the instructions that result out of that are executed asynchronously by the service. So for example, the Dynatree service or Prometheus service. But instead of using the WebSocket communication here, we wait for the correlating .finished event that is sent by the service that executes the action. And then we print the content of that event in the CLI logs. So yeah, so no WebSocket communication, but you still get the feedback on what has been executed by that service. Are there any questions about that?
Yeah, I would have a question. Is it for everything in Keptn that the WebSockets are removed, or is it only for particular events? So for example, for the installation, I think we still have the WebSockets in the installation, when you do the installation, or it's just completely removed and we always wait for the finish command?
They're completely gone.
Okay.
For the community, it may be interesting. So our installation process is based on a Helm upgrade or Helm install. So basically this takes care, or in your CLI, a Helm upgrade or Helm install is executed, and there is no pod started which would open a WebSocket as we did have before. So there's no WebSocket at all here.
And but for the installation, there is no WebSocket communication, but and you still get the information if the installation was successful or not, and when it's finished.
Yeah, but this is can be decided locally, because we get back the status of the Helm upgrade, and this is printed inside the CLI or by the CLI.
Got it. Cool.
All right.
Thanks.
One remark from my side, this means that we can now nicely display error messages in Bridge as well, right? Because we're not forced to look at the WebSocket.
Exactly, yeah. So now we have this this common denominator, which are the finished events, and those finished events contain all the information that is provided to the CLI, and also the Bridge can use that exact information. So now this makes for a more coherent way of providing the user with information on what has been done. All right, if there are no further questions, let's continue with the last PR. So since we're very busy with developing and pushing a lot of artifacts to Docker Hub, we thought it might be a good idea to be a little bit nicer to them and to actually clean up after ourselves. So therefore, the goal of this task was to have a GitHub action that periodically, for example, once per week or something like that, checks all the the images that have been built, for example, for feature branches or for bug fixes or for patch branches, and fetch those tags from the Docker Hub API, see when they have been last used, and if that last usage timestamp exceeds a certain time, for example, 1 month, we send an API call to clean up and delete that tag. And this way we try to reduce the number of obsolete tags that are actually not used anymore and take up space on GitHub or Docker Hub, sorry. And this feature was also implemented as a GitHub action. And yeah, you can see here. If you want, you can check it out here. So this way we can set up this cron job that is executed weekly. And then we have that script that performs the cleanup. And also thank you to Triscon who helped me in that task. And I think that feature will be useful in keeping our storage footprint at an acceptable level. All right, I think I do have some bug fixes still in the ready for review column, but I see it's already 5:30. I'll leave it up to you. Should we have a quick look at them or should we proceed with our remaining agenda?
Is anyone particularly interesting?
Not really. Most of them are really small.
Florian, can I ask you to just show us the title, give us just 1 sentence, and then you can move it to the done section.
All right, perfect. Yeah, this one is still on the review. Yeah, here the first one was a fix for the shipyard controller where the result field for the triggered event that should be sent out next in the task sequence was not set properly. So in this PR, I fixed it so that the result value from the last finished event was used for the next triggered event. In this way, the control of the task sequences now works as we have specified in our specification. All right, then this next one, missing info on failed deployment. I think the title is a little bit misleading. So actually what was done here, I went through all the Keptn core services that are executing tasks and made sure that everywhere where an error can occur during the execution of the task, a finished event is sent out with an appropriate error message. So it gets easier for the user to tell what went wrong in case there was an error. All right, the next one was a fix for the configuration service. So here the head branch was not properly set in certain scenarios because the order in which the branches have been pushed to an upstream repository was wrong. And with this pull request, I made sure that the main branch, which is either master or in the case of GitHub, the main branch is pushed first, and then that corrected this issue. All right, and I think now I'm through with all of those PRs.
Florian, the last one, or there is one left, the integration test you moved.
I showed that one already.
Okay.
That was the execution of the integration test for the self-healing and delivery assistant.
Perfect.
All right, I think that was it.
All right, yeah, then I will take over, even though I have nothing to present this week, as I was busy with a couple of other tasks. Nevertheless, it's my turn to take a look at the working items that are in progress or ready for getting started. Let me go to the, let me skip all those columns that are in progress and assigned and committed, and let's jump to the backlog, because here I have just 4 issues left for this year. The first one is still the task of migrating. It's the notification service to using the new cloud events. Well, this issue is still the meta issue that keeps track of the entire process. And further down right here is the issue that takes care of upgrading the notification service. When someone wants to do that, feel free. It's written in TypeScript. Whenever or when you want to like writing TypeScript code, please take a look and help us with upgrading the notification service. Then still, here is the issue that focuses on providing the documentation for a new shipyard format. Let's just have a quick look. I referenced here the sections in the documentation that reference the shipyard and explain what the shipyard is, and we need to provide an update there as the format has changed, as we all know. Yeah, it's going through these 2 pages and taking a look how to update the new shipyard. All right, yeah, and this brings me to the last issue, which is kind of our Christmas present for the Keptn team, because we want to provide a 0.8.0 alpha release, meaning that we take now everything that is available or has already been implemented for 0.8 and we release it. The goal is to have then something that we can already test, we can also evaluate with the community to get feedback for the final release, and it also gives us, I think, a good starting point for the next year, so that we have something that we can then build on and also test on, which will help a lot. And yeah, this is planned for the rest of this year by the Keptn team. As usual, this is our checklist for releasing Keptn. We shortened it at some points because it's not necessary to do all steps. Nevertheless, we want to release the Keptn spec in an alpha version, the examples also, then the utils and the Kubernetes utils and the Go utils should be released too. And we also want to have a release for all of the contribution services that are in Keptn Contrib, to have a version we can rely on. And finally, we create a release branch from Keptn so that we then get automatically build all of our images. This should also be a kind of test of the migration that happened from Travis CI to GitHub Actions, so that we are then on a safe side to reliably build Keptn whenever we want. This should also be kind of verified by this alpha release. All right, yeah. I won't assign it to someone because it's jointly, or the team is jointly working on that. When someone wants to contribute or wants to take the one or other action, please just leave a comment, and then we are happy to give you the task, and very appreciating your contribution and your help. All right. Yeah, as I said, our goal is to have an alpha release, and actually that is the part from my side this week. Is there someone who has a question or concerns? It's not time to
I'm also opening up
Feel
all
free.
the microphones of the Keptn community. If someone has a question, please feel free to just ask it. Okay, right now we don't have any questions.
Sorry, I guess I have a question. Do we plan to test a setup for where the execution plane is on a different cluster than the control plane?
I will take care of that.
Is this planned to do? Because I mean, this is one of the coolest features we do have for 0.8.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can already show it for the alpha release, of course, this would be awesome.
Yeah, Andreas, I have it on my agenda. I have already scripted out my test plan, and then I need this use case. I need to have the execution plane running on another cluster. And then I have to open the communication back to the control plane. I will test it out there.
Cool.
But I will, when someone else wants to give this a try, please feel free to do so.
So basically, you don't need a second cluster. You can also do installing the execution plane in a different namespace. So there is no
So
need
this
for
means we could try it with an integration test on keys.
right, yeah.
True.
Because that sounds like something we should definitely have an integration test. Bernd has written an integration test for linking stages with each other. I think we can extend this integration test. Basically, the echo service he is using, I can use the echo service as the dummy execution plane. And then we would have this in an integration test. I'll write an issue for this.
Thanks, cool.
Actually, my limitation is that the cluster that I'm using is too small to install the execution plane there, and I need to move to another cluster.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there will be different effects of being on a separate cluster physically than just being in the same cluster and in a different namespace. But the general idea is that they can communicate via a public IP address. And if that works, then yeah.
Yep. All right. I think when there are no further questions, we can end a little bit earlier today.
Yep, fine.
All right.
So, thanks everyone for joining. Actually, this was the last Keptn developer and community meeting for this year. We will run the next meeting on January 7th. And happy holidays, everyone. Thanks also for joining. Thanks, Robert, for your nice words. Yeah, have a nice holiday season, everyone. See you all in the next days or next year. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.